Howdy everybody. In the glass today is the Paul Pernot Bourgogne Côte d'Or Chardonnay 2020. Now what makes this quite an interesting wine is underneath you see Paul Pernot and Sons. You see a proprietors from Puligny Montrachet. Now Paul Pernot is in his 90s at this point in time, and he's been joined at this point by not just his sons, but also his grandchildren, both a son and daughter from the respective clans. Now, Paul Pernot got their start, he got his start in 1959 with about 10 hectare of vineyard sites that have been in the family for about 200 years, mostly in the village of Puligny Montrachet. He has kind of, been on the vanguard of raising the Puligny Montrachet appellation, as well as making some really interesting wines from the less expensive Bourgogne up through some Grand Cru that he also has and that we've carried in the past. Now the thing I thought was quite fascinating as I was doing a little bit of research on this was that at this point in time he sells about 60% of his total production to the negociants, kind of keeping the best 40% for himself as well as his family. He is one of the top 3 landowners in Puligny Montrachet. There's also La Flave as well as De Montil. So as a result, this is not someone who's just arriving on the scene, but someone who has been really steeped in the arc and history of Puligny Montrachet these last 50 plus years. Now, in 2020, the vintage that this comes from, I saw some winemaker for a different appellation said you can really see the sunlight in the glass. You can feel the sunlight in the glass. But I think what he's trying to politely say there is this was a warm vintage. So there is a little bit more overt fruit characteristic versus what we've gotten in cooler years. But that being said, it hasn't translated into a higher alcohol. The still is listed as a 13%, and I think that's largely accurate to what we have here. Now, Paul Pernot is quite interesting in that they basically bring in the wine to the cellars, they hand pick it, and they will put it exclusively in Francois Frere barrels that are lightly toasted. So this humble Bourgogne Côte d'Or is aged in oak barrels for the entire élevage, just like the wines from Batard Montrachet that cost 10 times what this one goes for. Now, I think this is kind of one of those where you can see a little bit of the richness. In the nose, you do get a little bit of that oak barrel note, but it is pretty judiciously done. So the fun thing about this Bourgogne Côte d'Or, they actually changed their name a couple years ago. It just used to be Bourgogne. To highlight this, in fact, comes from just 4 single sites within the Côte d'Or that were first planted in the 1970s. A couple other sites came online in the 80s, the 10s, and I think the 2000s as well. But this is basically 4 lieu-dits or single sites that have been kind of blended together. And as a result, you do get that little kiss of oak. You do get a little bit of like that little floral notes, some citrus, as well as almost like a bergamot and orange blossom element. Underneath that all, though, there is a really nice kind of acid-driven minerality. It's of an interesting moment that I was reading that before the advent of modern tractors, basically Puligny Montrachet, a lot of it was not planted because they could not break through that nice thick limestone outcropping. On the palate, there's just really nice focused acidity. There's still that kiss of oak. It was aged in oak barrels after all. But it's balanced out with that nice kind of minerality, that citrus element. This is one of those where they do pretty minimal batonnage or stirring, only about 3 or 4 times. And this is fined in the 10th month and lightly filtered before bottling. So it's not a natural white Burgundy by any means, but it is one where they've done more work in the vineyards, so they have to do less work in the cellar, and that shows in the quality of the wine in the glass. I'm enjoying it and I hope you do too. Cheers, stay safe, and be well.